Great to see everybody. We've got a nice turnout tonight. Our guest speaker, as you've no doubt read in the Pygmy Owl, is Rich Beausoleil and Milo. Now, probably the star of the show. But Rich is with Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife. He's had this awesome job for 21 years, working with their bear program and also cougar program. If I remember right, the title is, let's see,
Bear and Cougar specialist.
But there's the first word of the title was kind of interesting. Statewide, the statewide bear and cougar specialist. Anyway, I won't bore you. You've read the article, but we're very pleased to have Rich here to talk to us about bears and how to interact with them. And I know I'm very much looking forward to hearing more about Milo as well. Anyway, with that, thank you so much, Rich, and help me welcome. Yes.
Welcome everybody. Good evening. I just wanted to take a second to introduce Milo. So Milo is one of our Karelian bear dogs. I don't know if you know about that program or not, but it's a program that we started back in 2003. And it's basically a non-lethal solution to dealing with wildlife conflict with people. And so Milo is my third dog. We've had probably 6 handlers and maybe eight or 9 dogs over the years. Some have retired, some have passed on. They live, the lifespan is probably 12 to 15 years. And so Milo's one of the newest members, only a year and a half. So just wanted to take a minute. It takes about a year and a half to train these guys. So he's coming right out of the gates. This is going to be his year to shine. So anyway, that's Milo. Thank you. All right. So we're going to talk about understanding bears today. Hopefully this is informative and useful for you folks. Let's just jump right into it. Hi. Good. Thank you. All right, so let's just jump into our bear presentation. Here in somebody's volume. So I just wanted to start real quick and show you this North Cascade study area. You can see the state of Washington here and where we're talking about. One study area on each side of the Cascade Crest. So one was outside of North Bend, Issaquah, Snoqualmie, and this one was clear up from Highway 2 down to Leavenworth. That's where we began research in 2013. And that's been going on through today. We're actually pulling collars off of bears right now to bring the project to a close. But that project led to this more expansive effort to estimate bear populations in every one of those dark areas that you see. So this, of course, is the Columbia Basin where bears do not occur. Bears are all where you see the gray. And everywhere in black is where we've done a research project. So we're getting a lot of information on bears. Hasn't always been the case here in Washington, but it's really coming together now. A little bit about the project itself. Like I said, 2013, we've GPS collared more than 320 bears, and they've been captured about 450 times. We've collected over 15,000 hair samples from all those areas that you saw around the state. We've identified over 1,000 individual bears. And we visited 400 black bear dens. And all of this is in an effort to count cubs, monitor survival, estimate a growth rate for the state of Washington. Really, really expansive effort coming together. Here's our overall project deliverables. We won't go into that too much, but you can see the types of things that we are studying. And this is where a lot of this information that we're going to talk about today comes from. So some quick facts about black bears. Very much habitat generalists. Here's everything in gray is where black bears occur throughout the United States and Canada. And you can see Washington there, just where in the Columbia Basin where they don't. I don't know if that's surprising to you or not to see that distribution, but they can pretty much adapt to a lot of different conditions, mountainous areas, lowlands, wetlands, very adaptable species. So this is the habitat up close, and I also wanted to show you this grizzly bear recovery zone outlined in blue. No bears occur there yet. And this is the Selkirk recovery area, and this is where we do have grizzly bears. So if we were to guess, and it would only be a guess, it's probably single digits. And we've had some collared bears come into the state and kind of bounce around between BC and Idaho and Washington. So they come in and they go out. They've got pretty big home ranges. So I wanted you to see that. Just like everyone in this room and all people, you know, some of us have black hair and brown hair and red hair, blonde hair and gray hair. Bears are the same way. And so this is the kind of stuff that gets mistaken for grizzly bears, mostly in eastern Washington. Most of the bears in western Washington are almost exclusively black. There is a zone where they both cross and you can see some browns. This is the glacier bear that has a blue phase, and this is the Kermode bear or spirit bear found on the coast of British Columbia. And we've seen a couple of all white bears in Washington, but not of that subspecies, of course, more of an albino type, but it's pretty rare. So anyway, just a little bit about coloration. Here's the black bear's calendar. You can see where we are right now. They are still in their dens, just starting to emerge now. Cubs are always born at the same time of year, which is usually late January. So they go into their dens in around November, and they're in there for 5 months. They have their kids at the most energy demanding time of their life cycle. Some think that might be an adaptation to saber-tooth tigers and just being able to prevent predation on their cubs. So when they come out, they've got about 2 months to feed, and then breeding season starts. And it's not that they're not feeding during that time, but there's a lot going on, and males are asserting dominance and females are protecting cubs. So it can be a very stressful time. Then they're back to feeding for 3 months, and then the whole cycle goes again. So really you see they've got 5 months of solid feeding, a couple of intermittent months where it's, you know, they're doing the best they can, and then 5 months of inactivity. And so that is why bears are so focused on eating as much as they can in those months to survive the entire 12-year cycle. A lot of people ask this, and I'm wondering if this is surprising to you. From all the research bears that we've captured here in Washington, males range between 150 and 325, and the average is 230 pounds. Females 100 to 180, and a female in her prime at 8 or 9 years old, 140 pounds is about right. So you can see bears that are 300 and 400 pounds and 425. When that happens, it's because they're taking advantage of people food in the form of garbage, bird seed, fruit trees, that kind of stuff. And we will talk about that lots later on. Black bear home ranges. So bears move basically in response to the seasonal availability of food. In fall, they're looking for high calorie foods, and they may actually move outside of their core home range to get it. I'll show you an example of that. So home range sizes for males, you see one here in blue. And then for females there in red, females are about 8 square miles, males are approximately 35 square miles, much, much smaller than, say, mountain lions and wolves. And they overlap each other. It's not uncommon for them to overlap each other significantly. That is not the case for mountain lions and wolves. It's all about density dependence and territoriality for those species. And you get a little bit of it here, but nothing like that. Some denning characteristics, all black bears den in Washington. I've seen some articles say that there's bears in Western Washington that don't den. That's actually not true. I'll tell you why that happens. But females generally mid-October into April, males den for shorter periods, and they're very predictable. Females that are pregnant are the first ones to go in. Females with yearlings are the second ones to go in. Subadult males are the third ones to go in, and then adult males are the last ones to go in. And then you take that and flip it for emergence. It's the exact same thing. It's adult males first, subadult males second, females with yearlings is 3, and females with newborns are last. And they stay pretty close to these dens. I'll show you a whole bunch of dens here soon. For the first month or so. And these guys probably at emergence are about 5 pounds. So bears are about 1 pound when they're born. Black bear reproduction, another one that seems to even surprise professionals. Females don't have their first litter until they're 5 years old. It's one of the lowest reproducing rates of any of the mammals in North America. But in Washington, we've documented a couple of fours where those food sources are high that I've talked about, but also 6, 7, and 8 years old before they have 1 cub. And it's real common for cubs, the litters to be between 1 and 3. Most are 2, but first time females almost exclusively have 1 until they start to, be able to take care of that and be, get into that rhythm. Offspring born in the den and den with the adult females a second time. So you're seeing the 2 examples here, size differences between the 2. And they separate from their mom when they're 16 to 18 months old, right before the breeding season that we saw in June. So these cubs right here are probably in the range, depending on sex, somewhere between 35 and 45 pounds after a year. Good, Gary, could you close that door and I'll just let him roam?
Could I ask a question?
You know what? Let's wait till the end.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks. So some cub vocalizations, just so you can see here. Hopefully this will work without me needing the mouse, but I wanted you to hear what these guys sound like. Oh, it's not coming up. That's okay. Well, there's a couple. So we're weighing them, we're sexing them, we're putting them back in. Most of the time when we're doing this work and we know they have newborns, we're basically hanging 3 cameras around the den and we're counting cubs as they come out. When they have yearlings is when we go in and sort of work up the whole family and put collars on and monitor survival. So if we count 2 cubs and then we come back the next year and there's only 1, we're assuming a 50-50 sex ratio, but it's best not to trouble them when we don't have to. Sometimes collars fail and we need to get in there. So that's what you're seeing on some of these. This one, you can actually see mom breathing there. And of course, she is immobilized while we're doing our work. So anyway, they sound a little bit like birds or squirrels. So as far as den types go, lots of different kinds. In Eastern Washington, ground dens are very common. You don't see those in Western Washington because of the water in the ground, the water table in the ground. And so in Western Washington, we see a lot of stumps like this. We see some trees. This is actually Eastern Washington, but it's a good example of both, where a cedar tree is split, and that's me looking inside the den. And then sometimes they find a real thick brush that's covered in snow, and maybe they got a late start. And a lot of times they'll build these little nests and they look just like bird nests. And so even when they're in, this is a rock enclosure, which is not very common, but they do use them. It's not thermally as great as some of these others. But even when they're in these, all of these dens, they have this inside there. And so they're bringing in vegetation and building that nest for themselves or for themselves and their offspring. Some interesting things that we were very surprised about. We have some bears that have used the same den year after year after year, the very same den. We have females who use den 1 exclusively for raising cubs and uses den 2 exclusively for raising yearlings. And the next cycle, she'll repeat that. Pretty interesting. And then we've documented, like we've, one of the main ways we've done this, we've documented 3 different bears using one den. This bear might have been collared, the collar fails, and we go back to the den to find if we can recollar that animal, and we find another bear. And it's not the one we were looking for. And then we come back the next year and she's back, you know, so that's kind of what this is showing, where one bear can use a different den every single year, but then other bears use those dens when they're vacant. Pretty crazy. And there's a lot of relationships there. So daughters use past dens from moms and that kind of stuff. And same thing with sons. But we were not expecting this. So this was pretty interesting to see den use along those 10 years. And that's the stuff you would have missed if it wasn't a long-term study. One of the other ones, we went almost 7 years. I would have been up here telling you that bears don't use rocks for dens. The last 3 years, for some reason, we saw 4 or 5. And so now rock dens are part of the thing. So long-term research really does pay off. These are all the carnivores that have been documented at dens, whether just passing by or sticking their nose in the den. I'll show you a couple of videos of that, but so bobcats, wolves, other bears, wolverines, mountain lions, and coyotes. I don't know if has anyone seen this picture before? This is the cougar in Okanagan County from a long-term research project that I did. That picture, I don't know how that people got this picture. That thing's been around the world. Nobody gives me credit for it. So here's what and this should be a question mark. I don't know what I did, but this is a potential predatory visit to a den. So on the first one, you see this coyote, the den is right up in here. It stuck its nose in and she might have huffed at it. Bears are very awake. They're not true hibernators like a ground squirrel or something, but they're ready to defend themselves right away. And so that coyote came, stuck its nose in, probably got huffed at and left, but she didn't like it. So she left, and here's her cub coming out. Of course, this is probably this time of year. So she's carrying one in her mouth and she's got another one in tow. And it's real common for a female bear to have one den and then have 2 satellite dens. So if something happens, she knows exactly where she's going and then re-dens. So it's pretty cool. And then here is what I'm calling a possible neighbor visit to a den. So the den is sitting right here in this tree, in the stump, and this bear's marked, you'll see. But he sticks his nose in, and I'll walk you through this. Watch him here. He's going to turn the corner and he'll be at the opening on the den, and he does not sure anyone's in there, and then boom, all of a sudden she probably swatted or huffed. But the fact that she didn't come out and the fact that he is just continuing to move on tells me they know each other. And he could actually be the father of those kids. I don't know, but she knows this bear. regardless. Otherwise, there would have been a defense, and that didn't happen. So pretty cool. Things you wouldn't think when they're in the ground. But it happens. So spring bears are gonna be coming out in the next few weeks here. And so the first thing they're looking for about a month is grass. Bears, you see this big animal, you think, oh boy, you know, they're gonna eat all kinds of stuff. They like grass in flowers for about a month. And the thought is that gets their digestive system kind of slowly moving again, because they've been immobile. We'll have more of that here coming. As a few cycles go through, then they're switching over and they're finding insects and wasp nests and grubs, and they're digging and pulling punky trees apart to get at those things. And that's pretty much what bears eat. I mean, they're about 85% vegetarian. And these things are the other 15%. And so are a couple other things, but this is the stuff that makes up the most of their animal diet. In the summer, it's like we talked about on the calendar, it's all about breeding and berries, which we have a ton of different kinds of here in Washington. Very productive habitats, but when you watch a bear eating on some of these berries, sometimes they go in and pull a few in. A lot of times they're pulling them off one by one. So they're not pulling in all the sticks and everything else. It's amazing to watch this giant animal just go, you know, just picking away at it. And then in the fall, it's all about, I've got to put on some fat. We got the hunting season going on. Winter's approaching. You know, bears are out just finding anything they possibly can. And in areas where migratory fish are dying in the streams, they're taking advantage of that as well. And sorry, they call it hyperphagia, which is excessive eating. And that's pretty much the frame of mind that they're in from mid-fall until they go into the den. And then as far as den selection, and inactivity, this is real common, especially with males, where they sit on top of the den until the snow falls. And they just want to make sure everything is safe and people aren't going to disturb them. And maybe they're marking a few areas to let other bears know that they're there. But it's real common to see some tracks in the snow, and then eventually that bear will go in. So all bears in Washington den, but they may come out temporarily where attractants are constant and predictable, like trash day. And so it's common, they could come out for say 2 to 4 days, go back to the den for 3 weeks, come out for a couple of days, and repeat that pattern all winter. So bears are marvels of adaptation. You want to win a Nobel Prize or get kids interested in wildlife, have them contemplate this. When bears are in the den, they sparingly, and I mean sparingly, pee and poop when they're in the den for up to 5 months. We've documented one female that was 7 months in the den. How do they do that? They recycle urine back into amino acids. We can figure out how they do that. Think of what that would mean for dialysis patients. Amazing. They don't lose bone density despite inactivity for up to 5 months. And again, up to 7. How? If we could figure it out, think about what that could mean for osteoporosis and space travel, right? I mean, that's why we bring the astronauts back, because they got to put some weight on their bones. Otherwise, they're going to start losing bone density. So there's some things to figure out. And there's a few animals that do this, but bears are the masters. If they went into their dens in less than optimal condition, they can actually absorb some or all of their unborn young. So they mate in June, which showed you on the calendar, and then that cell develops to the blastocyst stage, and it floats in the uterine wall for July, August, September, and October. And then when they go into the den, it finally implants into the uterine wall. So if the summer was great and she's gonna have 2 or 3 kids, and then the fall wasn't so great and she's not in that kind of shape anymore, she can absorb all those kids or just have one. Amazing. So tell kids about that, because it's been 25 years in this business and that still blows me away. So let's talk about human wildlife interactions. We need to talk about the differences between what an interaction is. So you have a sighting, you have an encounter, and you have an attack. Those are very, very different things. Sightings is just, hey, look at this bear up on the hill. Great, we saw a bear. A lot of times people see deer and elk and it's great. But for some reason, sometimes when they see a bear, it's threatening. It doesn't have to be. An encounter is when an animal and a person are in close proximity, usually about 100 yards. Both are aware of each other's presence, but there's no contact. And then they split. An attack, for WDFW's purpose, is any animal contact with a person. So let me give you some history on this. Since 1900, we've had 18 attacks. This one fatality in 1974 was not well documented, but I'm not arguing that it wasn't a fatality. We just don't know a lot about it. It was documented that way in the newspapers. Dogs are a significant cause of interactions with bears. They're off leash like Milo. They smell, they chase into the woods when you're on the trail, harass the bear until the bear goes, wait a minute, I'm 200 pounds. What am I running from that little thing for? So they turn around and they say, quit chasing me, and they chase him. Well, what's he gonna do? He's gonna run back to me with the bear in tow, and then the bear just runs over everyone. Sometimes it's just a bump. That's classified as an attack. So those make up the majority of those 18. So just to give you some clarity. Hunters make up the second most. So they wound the bear with gun or a bow. It appears to be dead. They track it down, and upon turning the bear over, and they've always got a handgun ready to finish it off, it turns to defend itself and swats them. It might hit the hunter, they finish it off. That's in our attack base as an attack. I mean, it's contact, right? So I'm just wanting to give you some clarity about what makes up those 18. Surprise encounters in areas with attractants is the other. And I'm going to give you 2 examples that have taken place here that got a lot of attention. And it involves bears of all age classes, not bears seeking anyone out. In these 2 cases, we sought them out, and in this one, these can be very simply prevented, and we'll talk about that. So in 2010, this one got a lot of attention because this was a Bellevue councilman who had a second home, vacation home, outside of Leavenworth in Lake Wenatchee. And he was coming out his driveway. There's no street lights. It's basically in the woods right along the lake. And it's a big place where everybody does Airbnbs. And so the trash is building up, and there's a person who collects all the trash. But when you're done with the rental, you leave all the trash on the porch, and it could be there for several days until the person goes and makes the rounds and picks everything up because new people are coming in. So he was the resident, the owner, and was using it that weekend. He didn't rent it out, and it was late, 11 o'clock at night, and he was wearing a headlight, and he had 2 dogs on leash, and he was kind of fumbling with it. His driveway came straight down to the road, and when he picked up his head and turned the corner with 2 dogs, there was a bear feeding on some stuff, and the bear was completely shocked and jumped on the guy and knocked him down. The bear stopped. He let go of his dogs. They ran home, scratched at the door, and got let in. The bear turned around and walked away. This guy got up like anyone's mind would tell them, and ran to the house. Well, the bear saw that, turned around, came back, knocked him down again. When he went limp, she walked away again, and he tried it a third time, and she came back and jumped on him a third time, and he actually lost an eye. And he got flown to Harborview, and that's me out there at midnight with a couple officers. We used one of the KBDs, one of the few times it turned out to be a removal. And it was an older female, very, very small. And it got lots of attention, but it came right after this guy who killed a bear in his driveway in Leavenworth. And underneath his porch, he was storing 55 gallons of maple syrup or something like that. And the bear went in to go get it. He shot the bear. And so they covered that story. Then we found out that there was 2 cubs that got orphaned. So we captured that, and then that turned out to be a story. And then we talked about not sending bears an invitation, and these ran with really close to each other. And then prevention is the cure in bear country. And then within 2 weeks, this happened. So all of these things were covered, and we were doing as an agency, covering these events, but it still happened up north. And I will tell you, when we did the report, we classified it as a defensive attack. It was a surprise encounter with dogs, and there were nearby attractants that influenced this entire situation. This guy wound up being one of the biggest champions for bear education after this happened. He was actually featured on I Survived, and he gave some great messaging, and he was absolute joy to work with. And we went and interviewed him in the hospital, and he said, "Hey, do you think this will help me get reelected?" So just wound up being a super individual. This past year, you may have heard about another attack in Leavenworth. So this was a woman. This is her home here, and her house is outside here. And she came out before sunrise, stood on the stoop, let her dog out, who went down. It was just a small dog, really old, kind of deaf. And we're not really sure. She had 2 cubs. We're not sure what happened. She doesn't remember it. She just got knocked over. And it was that she turned around and punched the bear just out of reflex. The bear kind of gave her a nip and walked away. So we heard about it. We were on scene within 30, 40 minutes. And this is the track that we actually, so Milo wears the GPS collar, and every 2 seconds it takes a location, and we're able to document the path. And that's what you see in yellow. So this is where the attack took place. We walked up here and we found some tracks, and we knew it was a mom with 2 kids. And we went up to this spot, and this part right here is really, really steep. And we lost the track because it turned into concrete. And we figured, well, there's no way the bear's going into town. It must have went down here into cover. So we went all the way around and down into, this is what's called Blackbird Island in Chapman Park in Leavenworth. And this is the route we took to search. And we said, something's wrong here. We're missing it. The dogs weren't doing anything. So we went all the way back up and walked this part, and right in here was a little sandy spot, and we picked up the track again. So we followed that track with the dogs, and then they wound up treeing the entire family right there. And we removed her, and we rescued the 2 cubs 70 feet up a tree, brought those to a rehab facility. But the point of this story is, and so this is Highway 2 right here. This is Commercial Street in Leavenworth. And so town really starts right here. So this is where all the Christmas lights and everything that you see are going to start. The bear actually chose to go up behind these restaurants to take advantage of attractants instead of going for safety. So again, did that come out in the story? Probably not. But the classification for this one was a defensive attack, either surprise or in defense of the cubs. We don't know. But nearby attractants influenced that situation. So again, covered by everybody, but we just don't seem to be able to get over this hump and prevent these problems, and we're gonna talk about how to do that. So handling an encounter, and this is mostly in the backcountry when you're walking. It can't happen if you live along the edge of the interface between wildlands and development. Defining aggressive behavior is real important. This is not aggressive behavior. This is a bear on its hind legs surveying where you are. There's an escape route. There's an escape route. Oh yeah, those bushes, I can head down there towards the river. That's what this bear is doing. So this is not an aggressive behavior. Activity during the day, you saw it. I mean, they only got 4 or 5 months. They are eating as much as they can and barely sleeping. And then of course, if they go up in a tree and they're watching from a vantage point, going in a tree is a sign of fear. And that's what they do when Milo chases them. So that is not aggressive. When you hear them huffing and clacking their teeth, I don't know if you've ever heard that, but it's a real loud blow. It's like that kind of thing. They're telling you, you're making me nervous, just get away. And then they'll do that with their teeth, and it sounds a lot louder when they do it. That's a warning. Again, not real aggressive, it's just telling you I'm getting irritated and nervous. This is what aggressive behavior is. If they're swatting the ground, if they're bluff charging you, the ears are back, they're circling and trying to follow you, that's them saying, I've had enough of this. And that, you don't have to let it get there. We'll talk about how to do that. So bears generally avoid people. If the bear doesn't see you or appears uninterested, move away the way you came in and go to a different trail. Just give them the space. Hey, bye. Bear spray is, I can't say enough about bear spray. It is the cheapest insurance you could possibly have. It's a great preventative tool, and it works on everything. Everything, including us, which is really bad. But for them, you need something stronger. So pepper spray for people is like a 1% capsaicin. Bear spray for bears is, so you want to find it, what has to say bear spray. That just goes to 2%, but that is really, really strong. And so it works on everything, but it must be accessible. It's got to be, they've got all kinds of different ways to carry these bear sprays, and it's great. Don't put it in your pack because you'll never have that kind of time. And please check the expiration date. They're usually good for about 5 or 6 years. You can get a 2-pack at Costco for, I think, $45. And so for roughly $22.50 for 5 years, $4 a year to have that insurance is a no-brainer. And we teach these courses around. You see this little safety clip here. It's good to just pull that and practice on an inert can that shoots water spray. It still makes the same noise, and it kind of gives you a feel on what kind of control you need to have. It's not like a gun or anything, but it is very much more accurate than a gun. So you want to wait till it's 30 to 60 feet and aim a little bit lower. And what that cloud does is it builds like this. And so now your window is like this, whereas this, you got one shot. So this is the solution, and it's non-lethal, and it works on everything. Moose, mountain lions, elk, goats, everything. So grab a can. Unfortunately, as smart as they are, bears don't read signs. I wish they could. But people read signs, right? And so pick up any newspaper, go to the real estate ads, and this is what you're gonna see. Deer and elk abound, right? Close to the ski resort, wonderful development opportunity, breathtaking views. Well, guess what? It's bear and cougar country, especially when you see this. That's their #1 prey. So we got real estate disclosures telling people they're moving into flood zones, fire prone areas. Why not move it into wildlife country? A lot of people don't know it. They move to the end of a box canyon and they're like, I just saw a bear, you guys need to come. We're like, no, yeah, they do that. You know, I mean, so we'll tell them how to avoid it, but they need to know where they're moving into, and a lot of times they don't. And if the news stories aren't coming from Madonna, our retired WDFW extraordinaire public affairs person, they may not be complete, right? These are the kind of headlines that you see. You'll never hear me use this term. Please don't use this around me or I'll pull out my pepper spray. So you hear ravenous, pesky, slobbery mess. Well, guess what? They're eating the food we provide. Let's talk about what the biggest attractants are. Garbage by far is number one. We need bear resistant containers and places to store those cans during the week. Unfortunately, and this was, I told Gary that when I was coming out, I'm gonna talk not so great about bird feeders to a group of birders. He goes, remove those when bears are active. And I would actually like to see it buffered by a month. So feed birds, if you're gonna feed birds in January and February, or just don't do it. Those two things, I'm gonna show you a graphic here on what kind of calorie difference there is. And it's gonna surprise you. Beehives. So with beehives, we want to keep them away from the forest edge, so as close to a road as possible, and use electric fencing. Well, this has gone leaps and bounds if you haven't looked at electric fencing lately. It's solar powered, others are not, but it's only a few $100 now. So you could set it up temporarily when it's at most needed and then take it down. Chickens and other livestock. We've got some guides here that I brought for everybody, a lot of educational materials. We'll talk about those. They need to be kept in a covered enclosure with a roof, and use electric fencing would just make it ideal. A lot of folks don't know this. In the backyard, so one of the bear biologists in Montana made a statement that chickens are the new garbage of the West when it comes to bears. So he's right. I mean, this is why we're having all these issues, and they're all preventable. Fruit trees. Keep them picked, remove the fallen fruit. If you don't, and I know we like these trees because they're beautiful when they flower, but if you're not using that stuff or giving away the fruit to friends, cut it down. If you're if you're in places where bears occur, I mean, downtown Spokane is not going to be an issue. But anyway, prevention at home is just huge. So here's what I wanted to show you. Here's a graph of natural foods and a graph of human foods. A pound of huckleberries is 166 calories. A pound of birdseed is 1,740. So raspberries the same, 229. Look at dog food, and of course it's a pound, and you wouldn't really have that outdoors, but maybe you're storing it in a shed. I mean, we get 25-pound bags taken, and that is a home run. A cup of caterpillars, look at those, and then a cup of peanut butter. And of course you wouldn't throw a whole thing of peanut butter, but if I hit that row on trash day, I just might get there. And screw lids, no problem. No problem. So this, for a bear hanging around your house, is no different than you or I hitting a drive-through on a busy day to get something to eat. This is time management. So don't make yourself more attractive than the woods, because if you don't have attractants, they don't have time to hang around. They're leaving. So let them go back to the woods. Remove the calories. And then of course there's consequences when there is interactions. Female bears get killed, and we can orphan cubs, and that's always, not a great situation. There's an incredible amount of staff time that goes out to work on these issues, sometimes in partnerships with other law enforcement agencies. I'd rather them be monitoring where they should be and protecting our families from other things. It opens up the divide between people. Why did you have to kill that bear? You didn't have to kill that bear. Oh, no, you definitely had to kill that bear. You know, so it starts the chatter online and the social media. It's really gotten to a high level. And in all the years I've been doing this, I can tell you this with 100% confidence. Killing is not the solution. It just opens up a vacancy until the next bear comes in, because they kind of overlap. Remember what we talked about with their home ranges. There'll be another one there shortly going, cool, this is great. Look at all these calories. Score! So we need to address the root cause, which is the attractants. Because bears, these are all bears in orphanages. And we do return them back to the wild. Sometimes we can. And the issues that we see in Spokane and the valleys around it, same as everywhere else. Garbage, birdseed, fruit trees, and feeding wildlife. These are a couple of cans I've seen, you know, these floppy lidded cans. Now they make them in, 300 gallons. That's a score. I mean, they can carry this thing off and no problem. So to me, the at-home solutions are quote unquote easier because you don't always have the option to go to a bear resistant container. That's all in contracts. It's not the garbage company's fault. We'll talk about that in a minute. But commercially it can be more complex, but it can be accomplished. So this is a Kodiak can, bear-proof resistant, auto locks. So there's a special thing you do to open the lid, and then you put your trash can, you just let it go and it locks. And then when the trash can company comes, they grab it, they don't have to get out of the truck. They just turn it upside down, and when it's a 180 and it's held there for 1-2 seconds, it lets go. And then they just put it back down, and the lid comes down and it closes and covers up all them smells. And the quality of, and I don't know if I have this still in here, the quality of this plastic compared to this, a bear can actually bite this and remove it. They test these with grizzly bears in facilities for weeks. And the bears are jumping on it, 600-pound grizzly bear, and this is the gold standard. And oh, here you go. There's that thing. So that's a bear resistant cart that's just this, and that somebody put a latch on. This is a garbage company now. They put a little latch on, so you have to get out and turn the turnbuckle. Cost them time, gas, money, staff time, and bears go, oh, you turn the buckle. So it doesn't work. And they might go to the floppy lid ones given the choice, but if the whole street is turnbuckles, it takes about, I don't know, 10 minutes to figure it out. So prevention education is really crucial. We've got lots of new brochures like this where you're playing in bear country, living in bear country, visiting bear country. Inside, it shows you this behavioral ladder. This is both people and bears, and how to avoid them. Here's the calorie counter that we talked about. And then how bear wise are you at home? I've got lots of these over here. It's just a checklist that you can walk through your own place and go, oh, you know what? I'm guilty there, but no, I'm doing good there. And when you're done, you can look at it, fix the problem, and hang it up on the fridge. And always remember what's doing this. And then we make some stickers to put on garbage cans, and it's just one making it neat to know that Washington's bear country. And all of this is done in partnership with Bearwise. So Bearwise is now a nationwide education program that almost every agency in the country is a partner in. And all the people like me in other states, we see these materials, and one of us gets an idea and says, I'd like to have a checklist. And so somebody puts the first draft together, and all the bear biologists in the country look at it. So we're all using everything you see here, standardizing the messaging across the board. This is less than a year old. So this is a really exciting thing. So no matter where you go, and we keep the statements general, so no matter where you are, it works. I've got some of these out there. We talked about bears, dogs and bears and keeping them on leash when you walk. You're actually more of a threat with the two of you together than you are separate, Milo. So I've got a handout there that you can take, and then one about attracting birds and not bears. This is something that we made for our officers. We can actually now fine people for attracting carnivores with trash cans, which isn't always their fault, so we don't really write those a lot. But we do have some situations, we've seen some really bad stuff, so we can hang these on their door, check the problem, give them a warning with the time and who it is and who to contact, and if they come back a second time, they can fine. We don't want to do that. We never used it as a hammer, but and then there's this Bear Wise outdoor guide. It's pretty small. This is what it looks like. It's nice, heavy card material, so you could fold this and keep it in your fanny pack or something. And it's just good to look at before you go out for a hike. I never go anywhere without a whistle. We've pushed bears off of stuff they're eating. We split family groups up temporarily to count. We've gone in on mountain lion dens and kicked them off their kills and done all that stuff. I've never carried a gun. I carry a whistle. So if you're coming to a corner, blow the whistle. That lets people maybe on a mountain bike know you're coming. Especially when you're on a mountain bike, you should let everything know when you're coming around that hard corner. So just blow that whistle every 5 minutes, and wildlife will do this right around you as you walk, and you'll both have a great experience. A whistle works really good. And then the second thing I do, if I forgot it, that sounds like a gunshot, and that scares everything. So that's a great way to do it. We're making signages now and just normalizing it. There's no warning, there's no beware. It's just, hey, you're moving into an area with wildlife. And there's all kinds of dangerous wildlife, right? That could be potentially dangerous. And we're doing it with QR codes now, so folks can just scan that on their phone and access about 6 different languages. It'll be growing all the time, so that's cool. So the challenges for all of this is, like, look at the valley here. These are all independent jurisdictions. So whose garbage contract expires first? Let's start there, and then ask them to make bear-resistant containers mandatory. Who does that? If you're in town, it's city council. If you're outside of city council, it's county commissions. And if you don't make it known that that's important to you, they got all kinds of stuff to worry about. So really coming up with a detailed plan and tackling it, but when those contracts come up, that's the time to do it. And that's why I say it's not the garbage company's fault. They're fulfilling a contract. They're not gonna, out of the goodness of their heart, fill in another, garbage container that costs $200. We got to have it written in the contract.
Sorry to interrupt, you guys gonna be out by 7:55? Oh, yeah. Just before the dark goes. So, and the dark 25 minutes. Yeah, but I'm leaving, have a very nice.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks.
So solutions for human conflict, human bear conflict, city council level, the county commission level, and WDFW in the statewide level. It's really a partnership thing. Garbage contracts, like I said, bear resistant, you'll never have bear proof, but bear resistant containers need to be in those metal lid dumpsters, not the floppies, not even with a bar, because they just dance on it, 200 pounds, and collapse the top. And that stuff has a little bit of more of a cost to it. And so we got to look at cost sharing solutions for folks that can't pony up that extra, whatever it's going to be, $5 for a can or $60 for a dumpster. And then ordinances are huge. It can be done at the HOA level, the city council level, the county commission level. We've got to know what we're doing with the storage during the week. It's not just the day of. Placement of the cans on trash day and removing the cans on trash day. Feeding wildlife, and sorry, birds, deer, turkey all come to mind. That attracts all the other animals. And then maybe with building permits, have trash areas in enclosed areas be a condition of approval. So this stuff, it's just not on the radar of a lot of folks that are in city government and county government, but that's where you all come in. So people are part of the solution. We've been here before. Let's make the changes that result in long-term solutions. We need to develop partnerships, engage with each other, identify those root causes. We can certify cities now to become bear wise. And we're focusing right now on Leavenworth. We really want to say Leavenworth is now bear proof, and then go to another town and another town and another town, and they can use it to promote tourism. Hey, we have bears, but we're bear wise. We like being where we are, surrounded by wildlife. And then asking folks like you to engage and ask your leaders to revise those garbage contracts and ordinances. A lot of people say, well, why can't you just relocate the bear, right? And we know males have these huge home ranges. Gary, can you let her in there? So here's an example of this bear. You see it going in its den. It's a collared female, larger than she should be because she's close to people. She had 2 cubs. We captured this bear right here outside of Lake Wenatchee, and we all talked about what we were going to do. And we know males move these long distances, and the officers wanted to try to bring her to a different location on the opposite side of Lake Chelan. And she's wearing a radio collar, and we can find out how that goes. Well, it took 9 or 10 days, and as the crow flies, this is 70 airline miles. And so she came from where she was relocated, she crossed Lake Chelan and made her way. Oh, there's Lake Chelan again, and then made her way. Oh, I know where I'm at now. Boom, right back to her home range. That's what they want to do. They want to go back home. So you can't relocate animals between 0 and 16 months that are dependent on their mom. You have a window from 18 months to 36 months. So 18 months. Then they're adults and they're staying where they are. You can take them 200 miles and they're going to come back home. Don't waste your time with relocation. It doesn't work on adults. So we need to spend the time that we did all of that driving to address the root cause right there on the ground. Another study with case studies, when a mom has a couple of cubs, only one survived. This is the cub. That cub took over part of mom's home range. But what they do is they stay here for 50 weeks a year. And then for 2 weeks, they go down and visit the orchards. And then they go back home and you never see them again. So a lot of times when you hear, wow, man, the bear, we've seen more bears this year than we've ever seen. That could be due to berry crop failures and all these things. And everyone knows what's there. So they all come in for 2 weeks or 3 weeks and then they're gone. They never come back. So that's another phenomenon that we're learning from this on how to educate and address where we go. So here's a wildlife attractant bylaw toolkit developed by the Get Bear Smart Society. Provides an overview of what a bylaw is, provides sample wildlife attractant bylaws. It's a step-by-step guide to creating these, and it outlines a template for anyone. So this is online. You can grab it, cut and paste the whole thing, and where it says Whistler, replace it with Spokane Valley or wherever you are. You don't even have to write it anymore. This book provides everything. And this is a great leap forward. And I just returned from the 6th International Human Bear Conflicts Workshop in 2022, something we've been doing for about 25 years. At the end of it, I was on the steering committee. These were the take-home points. This was the last slide presented, and it was, no matter where you are in the United States, we're all saying the same thing. We all come together every couple of years, and we're all saying the same thing. So the problem is known. Progress takes time. There's a need for consistent messaging, bear-wise, right? So now we're getting there. We need to build better bridges between all the folks that can help us and appreciate bears and remove the attractants. The solutions are absolutely known. We could, if we had all the money in the world, we could end it right now. But coexistence has a cost, and not everybody can afford that. So implementation tends to be slow, and the public has to be part of the solution. And so that's my Bear presentation in a nutshell. I'm happy to take questions, but thanks for sitting through it and for Milo's wines. And again, lots of information to take.
Stop sharing now.
What kind of dog is mine?
You're good.
Special kind of dog?
Special.
Repeat.
Really bear dog.
Yeah. Rich, we're good.
Yeah, so she's asking what kind of dog is Milo. Milo's a Karelian bear dog. They come from the Karelia region of Finland, which is right on the border with Russia. And they've been born and bred to hunt grizzly bears and moose for centuries. This is an ancient breed. There's no cross of anything, 100% AKC Karelian bear dog. And the way they hunt out there is they turn the dogs loose. The dogs go find it, of course, after you found tracks and you put them in the place where they're going to be successful. And they herd the animal and bring them back to the hunter, and then the hunter shoots it. So we've taken that natural ability, that drive, that instinct, and we're using it for a completely different purpose, which is a non-lethal response to human-wildlife conflict. So a lot of times we'll use them to push bears. We'll use them for captures. We'll use them at presentations like this, where they're ambassadors. They're great hits at schools. They're used to being attacked by 20 kids and everyone wanting to hug them, and they just love it. Everybody's a member of the pack. So yeah, really, it's changed it, the way we do business. So it's cool. Yeah.
This will, I'm sorry to
Go ahead.
interrupt, but we've got very little time, so this will have to be the last question, unfortunately.
Okay.
Hopefully it's a good one. So you said the female, young female could be after the first year, could be 18 months old or so. And coming out of the den into breeding season, but she isn't gonna be bred
Right.
for 2-3 years.
3 more,
3 more years.
maybe 4 or
How
5.
does she avoid being bred?
She's
Or
just,
is she not attracted?
it's the smell. It's yeah, they're communicating with each other through scents, and they know that she's not ready, and they're moving on and looking for other things. And so the relocation part of it is because that's when they're leaving home. So they're in that dispersal phase anyway. So we're taking advantage of that to make a relocation successful. But again, it's a tiny little window on a very specific age class. The rest of them, it's unsuccessful, and we've learned that.
I apologize, you sounded very attractive. I have a cat. I didn't know they were in here, so we found them.
Real quick,
Every once in a while I hear about somebody wants to introduce grizzlies into the North Cascades. What do you think about that?
well, we're not able to be part of any of that by law. And so it's something that the Park Service is doing, so it would be a federal thing. And we're prohibited from talking about it. So,
Thank you, everybody.
yeah, thanks, everyone. Really appreciate you coming out.